The zipper was broken. I saw it before she did. A tiny glint of silver thread pulled loose on the back of her gown, right below the shoulder blade. Funny thing is, I used to fix those things quietly, carefully, like a ghost passing through our marriage, stitching the unraveling edges while she pretended nothing was ever fraying. But tonight I let the thread hang. I wanted it to. I wanted it to shimmer under the lights as she floated through the gala like the queen she believed she still was. Let them see it. Let them wonder. She hadn't noticed me arrive. She was too busy being adored. Too busy laughing with men who pretended to care about the fundraiser and not the curve of her waist or the way she tilted her wine glass. The way she used silence as a weapon and compliments as currency. She hadn't looked for me once. That part didn't hurt. Not anymore. 2 days before the gala, a valet handed me an envelope outside a restaurant I hadn't stepped foot in since our first anniversary. Inside was a photo, blurry, taken through tinted glass, but unmistakable. Her hand on someone else's leg, her mouth near his ear. In the back seat of a Mercedes I didn't own. No note, no explanation, just the kind of proof you don't argue with. I burned it in the sink that night. Not out of rage, out of relief. I wasn't crazy. I wasn't paranoid. I was right. She'd looked me in the eye every morning for the last 4 months and still kissed my cheek before walking out the door to see him. At the gala, they played a string quartet version of a song we danced to on our wedding night. I stood near the edge of the room and watched her pretend it meant nothing. That's what Geneva was good at. Unremembering things that used to matter, rewriting love into paperwork. She once told me emotions were just unmanaged data. That should have been my first clue. When she finally spotted me, her face flickered, only for a second. Then the mask slid back on. She walked over, slow, elegant, deliberate, always a performance. I didn't move. She reached out, palm open, fingertips shaking just barely. And I said it, not loudly, not bitterly, just enough to end something. Not this time. Not again. Her hand froze midair. The lights dimmed for the next dance, but I was already gone. And this time I wasn't looking back. She didn't follow me. That was the first surprise. Geneva had a way of chasing when it made her look powerful. Never desperate. She wouldn't stumble after me in heels like a rom-com heroine. No, she'd wait. Wait for me to realize I had no place to go without her. That's how she always played it. Cool, patient, perfectly cruel. I stepped into the cold air outside the ballroom and felt it hit me like a wall. My breath clouded in front of me. I didn't have a coat. I hadn't planned to need one. I walked the edge of the estate's garden, past glowing lanterns and sculptures I couldn't name. From behind the hedge, I could still hear laughter. Hers, that fake, high-pitched one she used when she was lying. The one she used the night I asked her straight-faced if she was seeing someone else. She didn't deny it. She didn't confirm it either. She just stared at me like I'd asked her what 2 + 2 was. And then she made herself a cup of tea and went to bed. That night, I slept in my car. What I hadn't told her, what no one at the gala knew, was that I had sold our house 2 weeks earlier, quietly, through a holding company I registered in Arizona. No signs, no moving boxes. I moved everything out while she was in Portland for a conference. I left the furniture staged exactly the way she liked it. Left the closet half full, her dresses undisturbed. Even her favorite lipstick still sat on the vanity. And when the realtor asked if the wife would be involved, I said, "She's moved on." Tonight was my final act. Not some outburst, not a scandal, just silence, a slow, methodical vanishing. I checked out of our life so gently that she hadn't felt it until I stopped playing my part. I made it back to the front gate when I heard the footsteps. Not running, not calling my name, just the click of heels, methodical and confident, drawing closer through the gravel. "You left before dessert," she said behind me. I didn't turn around. "I didn't come for cake. You embarrassed me," she said, her voice like ice in a crystal glass. In front of the entire board, I looked up at the sky. The clouds were rolling in. "I'm not your accessory, Geneva," she laughed. "Please, you never were. You're barely even a memory." That should have stung, but it didn't, because I had already become a memory long before she said it. Somewhere between the first time she didn't come home until 2 a.m. and the third time she called me Tyler in her sleep, I started peeling myself away from her in layers. "You should go back in," I said. "Your lover's probably wondering where you went." There it was. The flinch, the crack in her calm. The first sign she realized I knew. She didn't deny it. She just stood there in silence, arms folded, calculating. That was her real addiction. Not infidelity, not power, but control. And now she'd lost it. I reached into my inside pocket and pulled out an envelope, the same one I'd slipped the house keys into, along with two things. A copy of the wire transfer I made moving every cent out of our joint accounts and a single printed photo. Her, him, that Mercedes. I handed it to her. She didn't take it, so I dropped it at her feet. "Next time you want to ruin someone," I said, "make sure they still care enough to break." Then I walked away for good. She didn't chase me when I walked away. And that silence was the final confirmation I didn't need but got anyway. A few blocks from the gala, I stopped at a coffee shop that was somehow still open. Not a soul inside except a college kid behind the counter who didn't even glance at me when I walked in. I ordered a black coffee I wouldn't drink and stood at the window watching the rain finally break through the clouds and scatter down onto the pavement. The gala was only a few hundred feet away, but it felt like another planet, like a bad play I'd walked out of during intermission, certain I already knew the ending. I stayed there for 15 minutes, maybe 20. Enough time to let the storm grow thick and loud. Then I made my way to the hotel, but not the one I was staying at. No, this one had significance. Room 814 to be specific. You see, after the envelope with the photo was delivered to me, I didn't stop at anger. I started searching, not in rage, but with restraint. I wanted patterns, not chaos. I wanted to understand what kind of system Geneva was running behind my back. Turns out she wasn't even careful. I found the hotel receipts tucked into a drawer in her home office, folded into a manila folder labeled Q3 Charitable Events. She hadn't even tried to hide it. The reservation appeared 4 times. Same room. Always a late evening check-in. Always check out before dawn. Room 814. I booked it under a different name the night of the gala. Told them I was in town for a software expo. Paid in cash, no red flags. When I stepped into the room, I stood there in the quiet and listened for the ghosts. I wondered what they said to each other here. Did she talk about me or pretend I didn't exist? The bed was still made when I sat down on the edge of it. Still cold. A single red hair sat on one of the pillows. Not hers. Too curly, too short. And just like that, I knew there had been more than one. Maybe it was always more than one. And maybe I didn't want to know the rest. I took out the flash drive. It was small, silver, like a house key. On it were copies of everything. Photos, documents, emails, even one voicemail that she deleted from her phone but not before it backed up to our shared cloud. A man's voice whispering, "He doesn't suspect a thing, babe." I almost feel bad for him. Almost. I left the flash drive on the nightstand. Not for her. She'd never see it. I left it for the cleaning staff or the next guest or whoever needed to find it. My phone buzzed for the first time in hours. Geneva. No message, just a missed call. I stared at her name on the screen until it disappeared. Then I powered the phone off completely, walked out of the room, and handed the key back to the concierge without a word. There's a kind of peace that comes when you stop needing closure. There's a deeper one when you realize someone like her never deserved it. 2 days after the gala, I received an email from an address I didn't recognize. The subject line was short. "You still deserve to know more." No greeting, no signature, just a single link to a cloud drive folder. My hand hovered over the trackpad for a moment. I wasn't sure if I wanted to open it. Not because I feared what I might see, but because I didn't know if anything still had the power to hurt me. I clicked. There were 5 videos, all taken from different angles, different times, different rooms. I watched them in silence. Each one told me the same story, but from new, crueler perspectives. One was of Geneva and that same man I'd seen in the car, the one I thought was the center of it all. But in another video, she was with someone else entirely, a man at least 10 years younger, laughing nervously as she poured wine into a glass and pushed it toward him like she'd done it 100 times. I recognized that wine. I bought it. I remember the label because she once said it tasted like memories we hadn't earned yet. I didn't cry. I didn't throw anything. But I did feel something strange. Boredom. I was bored of her betrayals. The videos, the photos, the voices whispering in the dark. It all blended into static now. No plot twist, no twist of the knife, just the slow erosion of a version of her I had once protected like oxygen. At the bottom of the folder, there was a PDF file titled, "My name is Elliot. I used to be her project." I opened it. It was a letter, a long one, written like a confession. Elliot claimed to be one of many men she kept on invisible leashes, always just far enough from the truth to believe they mattered. She never let them in completely. She promised things she never delivered. She kept her power by never getting emotional, only transactional. He wrote that Geneva targeted men who were too polite to confront her, too soft-spoken to raise alarms. She used vulnerability like a ladder. Elliot said she spoke about me often but always in the past tense. He's dependable but slow to evolve. I felt sick reading that, like I had been an expired ingredient in her pantry. Still there, still sealed, just no longer useful. But Elliot's letter ended differently. He wrote, "I broke it off the moment I realized she turned me into a weapon against you. I never meant to be part of that, but I thought you should know who I am. I thought you should see the shape of the whole thing." He included a photo of himself. I stared at it for a long time. It was the valet from that restaurant, the one who handed me the envelope weeks ago. That meant the betrayal hadn't just been infidelity. It had been sport. She had trained them, kept them spinning in her orbit, and when one broke loose, she replaced them. Maybe she enjoyed the unraveling more than the lying. Maybe watching me slowly fall apart was her way of feeling power in a world that never gave her any without a fight. But now that world was crumbling, and I was still standing, not vengeful, not broken, just done. 3 days after the email from Elliot, I got a call from a number I hadn't saved, but I recognized it. It was the landline from our old house, the one we used to share, the one I disconnected 3 months ago. I didn't answer, not because I was avoiding her. I just didn't know her voice anymore. Instead, I opened the hotel room window and listened to the street below. People passed by holding coffee cups and shopping bags and holding hands. I wasn't jealous. I just felt detached, like I'd stepped into the wrong timeline. One where I still looked like myself but had no idea what I was supposed to be doing. The phone rang again. Then again. I finally turned it off. An hour later, I was checking emails when a new reservation appeared in my inbox. It was from a restaurant we used to visit once a year, always for our anniversary. Doors and Crown, the kind of place that served food in shapes, not portions. I hadn't been back since year 7. Geneva always made the reservation. I just showed up. The message read, "Table for 2. Saturday, 7:30 p.m. confirmed by Geneva Harland." At first, I assumed it was a mistake. Then I realized it was bait. She wanted to meet. I knew what this was. Not an apology, not a confession, just a performance. Another stage, another scene for a woman who needed to control the narrative even after it died. I deleted the reservation. Then, 5 minutes later, I made a new one. Same place, same time, but for a table near the bar, alone. And when Saturday came, I wore the suit she hated, the one she once said made me look forgettable. I made sure the collar was crooked. I didn't fix it. At exactly 7:29 p.m., she walked in, perfect as ever. Hair pinned up, lips dark red like she wanted to bleed elegance. She scanned the room for me and didn't see me. I saw the second she panicked. Not visibly, Geneva never made scenes, but her eyes flicked too fast. Her phone came out too quickly. She was trying to call me. I didn't answer. I waited until the maitre d' spoke to her. I saw her nod and walk to the reserved table for 2 and sit, alone. 10 minutes passed, then 20. She texted, "Where are you?" I replied, "Already here, just watching. You look exhausted, Geneva." She froze, lifted her eyes, scanned the room again, this time slower. Her gaze passed right over me once, then again, and then finally stopped. Her eyes landed on mine. She mouthed my name not loudly, just as a shape. I lifted my glass, water, not wine, and toasted her from across the room. She stood up, started walking toward me. I stood up too and I left. Walked out before she reached the halfway point between us. No drama, no shouting, just absence. Just the quiet kind of rejection people never see coming. She didn't follow. That was her pattern. She waited. She expected I'd circle back like I always did. But this time, the door didn't revolve. I didn't disappear into the night. I walked through it. I had no plans to see her again. I thought I'd closed every door, burned every invisible thread she might tug on to draw me back in. But pain doesn't work like a checklist. Some things don't end cleanly. Some endings echo long after the house is sold and the bank accounts are split and the wedding ring sits at the bottom of a drawer, cold and irrelevant. So when a padded envelope arrived at my hotel front desk, addressed by hand, I almost tossed it. But something about the handwriting caught me. Sharp, confident strokes, but rushed. Not her usual style. Geneva had always written like she was being judged. This wasn't that. Inside was a single piece of lined paper folded 3 times. No return address, just a note. I found this while clearing out the storage unit. It was dated 4 years ago. I didn't send it then, but you deserve to read it now. No signature, but I knew it was her. The attached letter was dated precisely 8 months after our 5th anniversary. The handwriting was different, softer, less calculated. There were crossouts, smudges, and a kind of rawness I hadn't seen from her since before she became whatever she'd become. The letter began like this: Fad, I don't know who I am anymore. That's the most honest thing I can write. Some days I wake up and feel like I'm still performing in someone else's play. And I don't even like the part one was cast in. You're kind to me. Too kind. I think I've grown to resent it. Not because it's bad, but because it makes me feel fake. It makes me feel like I've tricked you into loving someone that doesn't exist anymore. There's someone else. It's not serious, but that's not the point, is it? I've already crossed lines I can't uncross. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I'm not even sure I'm sorry. I'm just tired. I thought I wanted to feel wanted again. But I miss who I was when I was with you in the beginning. I don't know if I'll send this. You still make coffee for me every morning. You still look at me like I'm the version of myself I lost. And I can't stand how much I need that version back. I read it twice, then a third time. I wasn't angry. I wasn't even heartbroken. I was stunned by how much more I understood her in those 4 paragraphs than I had in 4 years. It didn't justify anything. It didn't erase the lies or the double life or the men or the games. But it cracked something open. This wasn't just betrayal. This was escape. She had built a prison she never admitted to, and I was the wallpaper in it. Her reflection, her illusion of normalcy. I sat for an hour staring at the letter, wondering how different everything might have been if she'd sent it then. If she'd told me before everything rotted from the inside. Then I noticed something odd. The envelope wasn't postmarked from New York. It was mailed from Idaho. I didn't know anyone in Idaho. Neither did she. Unless I went back to the PDF Elliot had sent me, the young man who claimed he was one of her projects. In his file, buried in the metadata, was a location tag. Boise, Idaho. Had she found him again? Or was he still orbiting her? And why would he have this letter? Had she trusted him that deeply, more than she ever trusted me? Or had he taken it? Something didn't add up. This wasn't over. Not yet. Not because I still wanted her back, but because the story she thought she buried was about to surface. And this time I would be the one holding the mirror. I didn't sleep that night, not because of the letter or not just because of it, but because I couldn't stop thinking about how neatly the story had shifted without me. For months, I thought Geneva was the epicenter of the chaos. But now, it felt like something or someone else had been steering the fall the whole time. The fact that Elliot had the letter, the fact that it was mailed from Idaho, the fact that someone wanted me to see it now, not before. Couldn't let it go. So, the next morning, I went down to the hotel lobby to get coffee and reset my thoughts. I sat by the window. No laptop, no distractions, just a bitter taste of espresso and a racing mind. The rain from last night had dried, but the city still looked bruised, gray, heavy, half awake. That's when I saw him. He walked into the lobby like he belonged there, which was the first red flag. Most people glance around, unsure. This man didn't. He went straight to the reception desk, asked something, nodded, then turned slowly and looked straight at me. He knew exactly who I was. I didn't recognize him right away. He wasn't the guy from the photos, not one of Geneva's known orbiters. He looked younger than me, mid-30s maybe. Sharp jacket, faded jeans, and that particular stiffness of someone trying not to look like he's on edge. He walked toward me. I didn't stand up. "Fad?" he asked, just above a whisper. I nodded slowly. He sat across from me without asking, pulled out his phone, unlocked it, and slid it across the table. "Watch this," he said. I did. It was a video. Shaky, low resolution, looked like it was taken through a tinted glass window, the kind you see in conference centers or high-rise hotels. Geneva was in it. She was pacing, not angry, nervous, and she was talking to someone I couldn't see. The audio was low, but I caught fragments. "If he finds out, not part of the plan. You said this would stay between us." The video ended abruptly. I looked up at the man. "Who are you?" He stared at me for a long second. "My name's Damon. I used to be married to Geneva's sister." My stomach dropped. "She doesn't have a sister," I said. "She doesn't now," he answered. "But she used to." And that's when he told me the real story. Geneva had cut off her family nearly 10 years ago, changed her last name, claimed they were toxic, said she wanted nothing to do with them. But Damon told me something else. She was always like this, always 3 people at once. And you don't realize how deep the damage is until you step outside of it. He'd watched Geneva manipulate not just lovers, but relatives, friends, even her dying mother. She knew how to fracture people from the inside, how to push them into breaking themselves so she never had to be the one holding the hammer. She once convinced my wife, her own sister, that I was emotionally abusive, he said. It took years for me to realize what was happening. And when I finally confronted her, Geneva disappeared, took money, left chaos, and cut contact like it was nothing. He handed me an old photo. Geneva, maybe 23, arms around a woman who looked strikingly like her. Same smile, same eyes, just softer. The woman had her hand resting gently on Damon's shoulder. "You asked why the envelope came from Idaho," he said. "That's where I live now. And that's where Geneva used to visit once a year, quietly until she stopped." He leaned in. "I don't know why she let herself unravel this time, but I think you were the first one who didn't fall the way she wanted." I didn't know what to say. He stood up. "She's not going to let it end like this. She's going to try to rewrite it." "Rewrite what?" I asked. He gave a bitter half-smile. "The ending. You walked away without screaming. That's not how she tells stories." And then, without another word, he walked out of the lobby and vanished into the crowd. She emailed me the next day. The subject line was just one word: "Why?" No body, no greeting, no dramatic plea, just why? Like she had finally lost control of the narrative and didn't know how to ask for it back. I didn't respond. Not right away. For the first time in years, I wasn't angry or confused or desperate for understanding. I felt like someone had finally turned the volume down on a song I didn't even realize had been playing in the background of my life. Every hour, every day, a steady hum of unease that I had mistaken for love. I closed my laptop and took a walk through the park. Not the one Geneva used to like. Not the polished one with benches and fountains and carefully trimmed hedges. This one was rougher, realer, a place where trees leaned into the wind and grass grew wherever it wanted. It reminded me of who I was before I'd been groomed into the version of myself she needed. Quiet, predictable, easily erased. That night, I finally wrote back. "Geneva, you asked me why. Why I didn't show up. Why I didn't shout. Why I didn't fight harder to be heard. Here's the truth. I've spent enough of my life trying to stay in rooms where I wasn't really wanted. I mistook endurance for loyalty. I thought keeping quiet meant keeping us alive. But I see now you didn't need a partner. You needed a mirror. And I stopped reflecting you. You didn't break me, Geneva. You taught me something I should have learned years ago. That peace isn't given. It's chosen. And I choose it now. Take care of yourself. Really. I never heard back. Not that week, not that month. And maybe that was the greatest gift she ever gave me. Silence. Because in the space where her chaos used to live, something better grew. I moved out of the hotel and into a small cottage north of the city. It wasn't anything grand. It had creaky stairs and a stubborn front door and a fireplace that never worked quite right. But it was mine. Quiet, steady. And one morning while making coffee, my kind of coffee, not hers, I caught myself humming. Not because I was healed, not because I had moved on, but because for the first time in a very long time I wasn't walking on eggshells. I was just walking forward. Geneva didn't get the final word. I did. Not with anger, not with revenge, but with distance, with stillness, with a life that no longer had her name stitched into every corner of it. And when I think about her now, it isn't with hatred. It's with relief. Because some endings aren't explosions. They're just a quiet door closing and the sound of your own feet finally walking in the right direction.